Cinematic Shuffle has shuffled once again. If you were around last week on my Threads handle, Twitter handle, or as a YouTube short, you would have seen me give off my 3 hints for what this film was going to be. I said it rises to the occasion, there's a cure, and it's the beginning of the end. Technically, 3D Jake did get it right first, but that was before I officially changed the hints. Originally, the second hint didn't just read cure, but it also read a cure for Alzheimer's, and I was told that that was too obvious. So, that was changed, and I guess it did the trick because only one person got it right this time, Mr. Sticky making a late guess with Rise of the Planet of the Apes, which of course is right. Some other guesses included X-Men The Last Stand from Jacob Martin, my brother guessed The Matrix Reloaded, and Golden Ashes 2144 guessed Contagion. But without further ado, let's talk about Rise of the Planet of the Apes. Rise of the Planet of the Apes is the first in a new franchise focusing on the mysterious planet of the apes. This time as a prequel, the film strives to explain to the audience just how the planet came to be in the first place and how the ape known as Caesar rose to power after a science experiment went wrong, giving the apes heightened intelligence and the wherewithal to stand against animal cruelty and abuse in a very big way. I've often considered this entire prequel trilogy to be one of the best, nearly perfect series. I've actually seen the original franchise as well, and as classic and as fun as those movies can sometimes be, they were imperfect and they were definitely aged in a lot of different aspects. But one thing that those films had that this just doesn't so much is an element of surprise. This film, as great as it is, technically ruins the greatest shock and surprise of the first Planet of the Apes film, which was arguably one of the best twist endings in cinema, period. So if you've seen neither Rise of the Planet of the Apes or the original Planet of the Apes, and you don't actually know what that surprise is, go ahead and watch that original first film and then come back to this review because I'm about to spoil it. So, in the 60s film, the original Planet of the Apes, at the end, you find out that these astronauts, they landed on a planet full of apes that can speak, and they treat humans who can't speak like animals, and we think that it's just this, backwards planet that they landed on in another galaxy. But in fact, in all reality, it is Earth. Several years into the future. That's what that scene was at the end, where Charlton Heston screams in horror when he discovers the Statue of Liberty. It's a classic scene, and the only negative that I can say about this movie is the fact that it ruins that surprise, because obviously the entire movie takes place where? On Earth. Not on some distant planet in another galaxy. That being said, if you don't care to watch an older film that is arguably kinda goofy for its time, then this will do just fine, And even though I'd probably say that this is the weakest out of all 3 movies that we've gotten, it's still really good and probably the most important in terms of character development and the reason why Caesar is as compassionate as he is, even though he is a warrior because of his connection to the humans that raised him, making it really easy for an audience to understand why he, out of all apes, was chosen to be the trusted leader. The graphics in this first film, though, aren't the best. Back in 2011, it was actually really, really good, but it's hard not to compare it to the sequels because, you have both Dawn and War for the Planet of the Apes that were insane when it came down to visual effects, cinematography, action, all of that, while this, it doesn't match up to that. But it is still pretty good, and Andy Serkis with his motion capture work and whatever they did with his voice, it's instantly memorable. There's also something to be said about how this movie has the best focus on the humans, as the rest of the movies definitely shift the main character focus to the apes, as they should. But yeah, both the original film and Rise of the Planet of the Apes deal with the concept of animal cruelty and abuse, and while I'd argue that the way they did it in the original film was more ingenious by swapping roles between humans and apes, that made the audience think a lot more, Rise was more in your face as it tried to be a little bit more realistic, explaining not only how the apes got to be so smart in the first place, but also why they wanted, or perhaps needed to. So I guess it really depends on what you prefer in terms of the franchise. Either you prefer the before or after the collapse of society. They're both good. Cinematically though, I do prefer these prequel films. Psychologically, I prefer the original Planet of the Apes movie. The further the classic films got, the less clever and more goofy they became. Anyways, I scored Rise of the Planet of the Apes an A- letter grade, final overall score of 89%. 89 out of 100 possible stars. You know, it's not really at the level of the sequels, but it's still a strong film and one of the best prequels I've personally ever seen. I think a lot of people, especially those that are a big fan of the original series, were expecting very little from this movie, especially because the lead actor here was James Franco. But because it dared to do something a little bit differently, and because it took certain risks here and there, I think most people that expect something terrible would be pleasantly surprised. But what about you guys though? What did you think about Rise of the Planet of the Apes? Have you seen the original series? And if so, how do you think that this compares? Let me know, and as for YouTube, you guys know what to do. Hit the like, subscribe button, and bell to be notified when I come out with my next review for the Cinematic Show. And until then, peace out.